So, Max, I was telling you earlier, I haven't felt like this since I was like 10 years old, and this girl walked up to me on the playground and said that her friends told me that she wasn't allowed to hang out with me anymore. I've not been this despondent since that day. It's like, did they have to post this publicly? You know, it feels humiliating to have to read this out, to have to read this. But I think you probably have a more optimistic take for the BNR.
Mine's a little bit more optimistic. First of all, my condolences, both the 10-year-old you and now. I do want to say Legacy is still here for you to play with. I want to start this off before anyone clicks out by saying, please don't go be shitty to Carmen or WotC employees or anything like that. Carmen, she's doing a fantastic job writing these. She's really giving it her best effort to state the position of the R&D team as a whole. And Magic players tend to do this thing where we never let a good deed go unpunished. And so we tend to say, hey, will you explain yourself? Well, I don't like your explanation of fuck you, blah, 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 like go after. You're shitty. You don't care about legacy. You don't want this whole thing to die and just got to go play commander. But like, like all this, like she doesn't need to hear that. Like, I understand that people are frustrated. I'm personally, we'll get into that in a bit, but I just want to start off by saying, I understand that a lot of people watching this, and Zach, who I'm talking to right now, are quite frustrated. And that's fair. Please don't go take it out on WotC employees. They're doing their best. I promise you. They're really trying. And whether or not that aligns with what we think is best is not always the case, but I promise you they're doing a good faith best effort.
Yeah, that I agree with for sure. Yeah, I think, and it also like that. It's low class. It doesn't help. Also, like it's not, you're not furthering anything by doing that. But let's get into your actual reaction to the BNR.
Okay. So when we did the panel before, I basically said that I wasn't convinced any changes needed to happen due to overall power levels and win rates and metagame percentages. And I did suggest, if Reanimator is a bit too good, we can knock out Reanimate. If people are sick of playing against Oopsal spells, we can knock out one of the key pieces there. But all of that said, I wasn't convinced that something needed to happen. And I think that WotC is kind of in this impossible decision where last BNR in March, it was March, right?
It was.
Anyway, last BNR, they basically talked a lot about player sentiment and how even though the numbers of Legacy looked fine, people weren't happy. And so they knocked out Troll, they knocked out Mycospawn as a way to basically say, hey, here, we'll tone down the Blue-Black Reanimator deck a little bit. It wasn't oppressive before. It will be whatever it was, a little bit toned down from there now. And this Eldrazi deck that is making people absolutely miserable because you can't interact with Soviet Mycospawn, we'll knock that card out. We'll see if Eldrazi exists after. And it kind of worked, right? Like Blue-Black Reanimator is a little bit worse than it was before. It's still good. Eldrazi is nowhere to be seen, which is neither here nor there. But they did basically react to player sentiment and nerfed this good deck a little bit just based off of overall player sentiment. And I think that now they're basically in the same place where I'm going to spitball a number here. I'm pulling it out of my ass for clarity. But say Blue-Black Reanimator has this like 52% win rate overall against the field, just a little bit better than half. And it's got some good matchups, it's got some bad matchups, but people are sick of playing against it because it's a really safe, fair choice that has been really good for the past two years, at least, right? And so are they just going to ban another card from this like 52% deck when there's other decks that are performing better and other things that are doing better than it? But people are just sick of playing against this deck with a high metagame saturation and that a lot of good players pick up? Or do they react to player sentiment and nerf that deck more? Or do they say, looking at their numbers, like there's no real justification to ban anything? And I think last time they kind of leaned towards the player sentiment bit, and this time there's like, this is essentially a slippery slope of legacy players are always going to be unhappy about something. Like our format, for better or worse, is inherently broken. It's full of design mistakes. Every single good deck in Legacy is a design mistake to some degree, right? except maybe like Maverick.
Sure. This episode of Eternal Durdles is sponsored by CardMill, the first automated scanner and sorter built specifically for trading card game players. With its intentionally compact design, CardMill uses AI-powered recognition to identify each card and sync inventory with real-time pricing, batching up to 300 cards at a time by name, set, color, or type. Collection data is securely stored in the CardMill network, giving players full access to their cards through an easy-to-use web portal. CardMill supports Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Flesh and Blood, Disney Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited, and many more to come. Created by software engineer and longtime Magic the Gathering player Jonathan Dumanis, CardMill launches on July 22nd on Kickstarter with early bird pricing starting at $350. Backers receive lifetime access to all software updates and new features. Go to cardmill.com to learn more and reserve your path to the future of card sorting. Point noted, and I'm sure there are some people who are like,
mistake. Choke is a fucked up Magic card.
Yeah, that's an unfair Magic card. I don't like that none.
Anyway, the point being is that there's like, people are always going to gripe. Like, so where do they draw the line on banning based on player sentiment? I think that's one of the things that people who are against banning on player sentiment were kind of talking about is like, where's the line? Like, can anyone just complain about anything and get it banned? And so I get that people are sick of things, but I'm also guessing that WotC data is just not showing that Blue-Black Reanimator is the best deck.
Well, I think, Max, you bring up a good point. I think, there's always going to be something to complain about for sure. And I think I would have been fine with no changes had the information that they shared with us been like, here's the data behind why no changes. Instead, there was a lot of, people complain about us talking about the vibes of the format and how things feel, and there's not backed by data and numbers and stuff. It's too wishy-washy, right? We get a lot of that. There was nothing in here aside from, we feel like Oops is okay. We feel like Reanimator is fine. It was a lot of vibes and feels on their end and no data. And had they shown us data, it felt like I read the article and I felt like I was reading something from somebody who never played the format. So, I get where they're coming from with like, hey, let's back it up with the data. But if they're not doing that, that is, to me, my visceral reaction to this wasn't like, oh, they didn't make any changes. I was like, that's probably going to happen, whatever. And then I'll live with that for the next 3 months. But now we're not also, we'll get into that too. But without getting any information that felt like somebody who played the format was really talking about, that was how I read it. I was like, this is being translated probably from somebody who plays the format as their like, person in the room, right? Carmen's writing it, right? So it's already being like telephoned one way, and what I got was
Legacy. Carmen's
I know this. Carmen does know Legacy. I just don't know how bought into the format Carmen is, because reading that did not feel like someone bought into the format. Did not feel like somebody who is on the ground playing the format.
I think that she plays the format, but she wasn't writing it necessarily to Legacy. I felt like she was writing it for a broader audience. I would agree with that. I think that she's in tune with it. I don't think that necessarily she wrote it with Legacy players as her sole audience. She tried to write it kind of as a more
isn't that kind of a mistake though?
Approach. Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. Yeah. But again, like, these are things that
and I want to be clear. It's fine to not be bought into the format and have to write this. That's fine. But when it feels like nobody making that decision, because that's what it feels like when you're reading that. Whoever's making this decision doesn't get on the ground and go to the LGS, doesn't go like, I know you may or may not have heard my rant early this morning. I don't want to get too far into it, but I went to my local 1K on Saturday, a 32 cap tournament where 25 of those presumed 32 people stayed home. So we played a 7-man, which is like, that's not even like back in the day, you couldn't even run a 7-man. We would have just went home, you can do that now. Luckily you can, we got the chance to play 3 rounds and then go home. But like, that's what Legacy is for a lot of people right now, is people aren't coming out to the tournaments. So when you read something that doesn't feel like someone on the ground has ever seen something like that happen, it feels disingenuous.
So a couple of questions. The first question I have is you talked about lack of data, lack of like quantitative data.
Yeah. They have it. They could share it with us.
If you've got a format, so between last BNR and now, basically Reanimator didn't show up for several weeks, basically a month, and then I was like, me and a few other people, like, deck's probably still good, and we tried builds, and the blue-black one ended up just rising to the top. I was starting off with a bug list. The fact is, there was zero Reanimator data for the first several weeks, and then
for the first several weeks of this meta. You're talking like back in April.
And then
yeah,
myself and a few others started off with Reanimator builds and did really well because no one was expecting it. And then probably the win rate was really high. And then people reacted to it. Oops was also really high. Graveyard hate went through the roof.
Yeah, I remember that was a point where it was like 25%.
Way down. Yeah. And then that was the time that basically Reanimator like went back into the backseat. Blue-black tempo was the deck to beat. Everyone was playing blue-black tempo, not Reanimator. And then Reanimator kind of slowly crept back up, started doing slightly better and better. And I don't know, win rate was changing through all of that. And now Reanimator probably has like 1 week it has like a 49% win rate. Next week it has like a 53% win rate. Next week it has like a 47% win rate. Next week it has a 52%. Like, what do you say for your data? Like, she's writing a snapshot of it, like what? They made a decision like 2-3 weeks ago. Like, there's no way to, I think, like as far as quantitative data goes, there's no way to say that this deck has X% win rate, and there's no way to make that number meaningful. Like, I don't think that a 52% versus 51% versus 52.5, I don't think it fucking matters at all.
So I'll back you on that. I do not think that number matters, but my real problem was not so much, okay, don't back it with the data, back it with vibes, right? But when you say something that's so off base with what most of the people in the format are seeing, like everywhere I go, every person I talk to in the format is like, God, oops all spells. And I don't know anyone at my local who plays oops all spells, but everyone's complaining about oops all spells. So
that's the problem.
And that's fine. Fine if that's the thing. If they're like, hey,
everyone is
actually
wrong.
Playing it.
Everyone is wrong, Zach.
Sure, that's fine. And but they didn't say that. They didn't say, hey, a lot of people anecdotally don't like oops all spells, but we're not seeing it at locals at all. We're only seeing it online.
Well, the problem is something that, like, Brian Koval is trying to play all these interesting decks, their leagues on Magic Online, and gets hit by 1 to 2 oops all spells, and it dampens his play experience. And he's by far the most viewed content creator.
Yeah.
And so he's frustrated about all these cool decks that would get time to shine the sun, but just get fucking ranched by oops.
You've actually unlocked my trap card. Continue.
There you go. But anyway, the point being is that, like, and I don't mean he's the only one. Like, there's a lot of content creators out there who are making cool decks and are basically running into this oops problem where it's really, I mean, it's like, oh, well, we either had the answer or we didn't. And, or answers, it's a pretty resilient deck. Or oops, kept a busted 7, or they mulligan to an unplayable 4. Like, there's so much RNG within that deck that it makes for kind of a subpar viewing experience and subpar content creation experience. And I get that. And so I think that a lot of people who don't run into oops but are still like complaining about it is because they're basically their experience that's getting damaged is their content consumption experience. And so I think that, or for Bosch et al., their content creation experience. And so I think that that's the problem there. I play a fair amount of oops. Like, if you look through my MTG Goldfish history, like, I've been called somewhere between an oops expert and a mediocre oops player, depending upon who you talk to. And the point being is that, like, I would play the deck if I thought it gave me the best shot at winning a tournament.
Of course.
I'm right there with you on that. I don't think it comes close. Like, for the Legacy Showcase, like the 32 player qualifier, the one that matters, that we go to the box if you win. 0 players registered oops.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like,
that is meaningful. Yeah.
And it's actually even more meaningful because if I'm going to play against a bunch of crushers, people who I think are as good or better than me, if like as good if not better than me as a player. Like I would bias if I have to beat a bunch of people better than me. I'm gonna bias toward a luck, like a deck like Oops, not like Delver, where I'm like, well, I'm gonna fucking play this and I'm gonna pack your spell, and it doesn't matter how good you are at Magic. I'm gonna like if Oops was good enough, I would play that in a heartbeat in that sort of metagame.
Eternal Dirtles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned.
So
nobody did.
Yeah, no. Well, I 100% agree with you there. It is widely a perception issue, but I want to go back to where I talked about my trap card, right?
Okay.
So unlocking these fun decks, right? Well, what about the decks that just can't exist right now? Like, I don't know, Maverick, you mentioned. Decks that cannot make it in this format at all. What about those decks? The decks that should be able to be played because, as they said, this is a format where people like to collect cards for a deck and play those cards for a long time. Well, all those people playing those fair non-blue decks just don't get to play Legacy anymore. You know, there is that as like a data point is not the word I want to use, but there is that. Like, does the Oops All Spells being a deck people can meme in the format outweigh the people who want to play like Maverick to beat Delver? You know,
I mean, Deafening Silence, Fairy Macabre, Endurance. Oops is dead.
Yeah, but they win before so here's as a non
like, Fairy Macabre, Endurance, like that.
Fairy Macabre and Endurance are two cards you can play, but
and Silence, like, yeah, if you get to turn one, or say you lost game one, and you're on play.
You have to have mold of those, but you have to get them. That's fine. And
I guess the point
I'll
being is, like,
that, yeah.
I have lost to Maverick as Oops.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah. I mean, it's
like a fair amount of times.
Possible.
Like,
sometimes you even fizzle. You know,
mediocre Oops player.
Yeah.
Like, or you know, we mulligan low and shit happens. But anyway, like, I agree that like the perception is that Oops feels miserable to lose to. I think that part of the problem with Oops All Spells is that the deck came around in 2013.
Adam Prozac, it was a meme deck when it first came around.
Yeah, Prozac invented the deck in 2013, and it was a meme tier deck for 12 years.
Yeah,
more or less.
For sure.
And basically, everyone playing Legacy was like, "Yeah, it's a joke deck.
That's how Doomsday and Breakfast were until Thassa's Oracle came about." You know,
but now, like, when you lose to Doomsday now, do you feel like that was do you feel like, oh, bullshit, I shouldn't have lost that? Like, no, you're like, oh, Doomsday's a good deck. Like, Sneak and Show, same thing. Sneak and Show actually has the opposite perception, where it's spent like years as like a dominant deck. So it's like every time you beat it, you feel like you really lucked out. But the point being is that we've had this like perception that Oops is a deck you shouldn't lose to for a really long time. So that even now, if you beat it 60% of the time, lose to it 40% of the time, like win 6 matches, lose 4, you'll still feel like that was bullshit the 4 matches you lost.
Well, there's a reason there's a psychological reason for that, because we always remember the bad things over the good things. So that's just how it is. Like, this is why we'll always be in this cycle of complaining about the format, because people are always going to be like, "Hey, I lost to this guy one time and it irked me." You'll never forget that, but you'll never remember the times where you beat him like every other time he showed up the LGS, you know?
And that also has this problem where it can high roll to beat basically, I'll say any amount of hate just for the sake of this argument, where you can just keep a busted 7 and go pop your ley line, 4 mana, kill you. Or like whatever it is, right? Like, I have triple packed for your double force, or I have triple packed for your triple force, because I had Black Source, Dark Grit, Lotus Petal, 4-drop. It's 4 cards.
Yeah, and then 3 packs. Yeah.
And you had 3 forces, and it didn't matter. You know, like, Oops can do this crazy things when it draws its best possible stacked hands. But, like, it also doesn't do that a lot of the time. And so it's one of these things where you'll feel like, oh, I'm going to really prepare my deck to beat Oops. And then you'll lose to Oops high roll anyway, and that feels off.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also part of it, is the preparation anxiety of knowing that, like, you already hate playing against this deck. You know that you've packed your sideboard full of cards specifically for that incidentally hit on some other decks as well. And then you're losing to other decks that you should have a decent matchup against, but you've dedicated sideboard slots to you've lost sideboard slots for those decks, which becomes an issue as well.
Yeah. So anyway, I get why people are frustrated. I understand it. I think that part of the perception or the issue, there's two main issues, I think, from a we're doing this to ourselves kind of issue.
Yeah.
The first one is that basically the complaint echo chamber, which you already touched on, people who
of course
aren't playing against Oops are still griping about it because of people are griping about it. Therefore, oh, this is a problem, and that self-perpetuates. And then anytime someone has a bad experience against Oops, they get to add to it, right? And sure enough, that'll keep growing. And the second problem is the MTGO copy-paste metagame.
This is the issue with MTGO and with Arena is that beyond the copy-paste metagame, you also are incentivized to play as fast as possible, and that deck is it's like playing Burn on Arena, right?
Yeah, that's for leagues. But I mean, for challenges, I think the copy-paste metagame is where it really starts to get crazy. Here's a data point that doesn't involve Blue-Black Arena. In the Showcase Challenge, the first one that went on, that Ocean Soul won with Blue-Red Delver, like Blue-Red Tempo. Ocean Soul, he's a great tempo player, really good list. The next challenge, six copies of his deck in the top 8.
Yeah.
It was all Blue-Black Reanimator.
Well, I mean, that was ostensibly the correct choice then, wasn't it?
Right, but then he wins the Showcase with this deck that not many, like this build of Blue-Red Delver that not many people are playing, because he's innovating, he's working on it. People copy paste that list, and then good players copy paste the list. 6 of 8 in the top 8. Like, yeah. So it's not that like moving that out of Blue-Red Delver. Now it's not that like Blue-Black Reanimator is busted. It's people saw that it's winning a lot of challenges. They'll copy a challenge-winning list. They're good players. They'll continue to do that. And then they see more and more of those. The challenges aren't that big, and the good players are really good. Like Iko Baronin, Andreas Peterson, won something like, I don't know if his streak got broken, but when I spoke to him at some point, he was on 10 consecutive challenge top 8s. And they weren't all with Reanimator. Some were with Tempo. There was a Stifle Knot in there. The stuff like he's working on and playing. And he's top 8ing all of the challenges. So should we ban him for competitive diversity? Maybe.
Let's also give a quick shout out to him, because it takes some amount of dedication to be that good and be able to pivot in the format to begin with.
It does.
But when you're playing as a content creator, both of us know this. When you're playing constantly, you just get better at the game. You understand the lines, even if your deck isn't perfect. So you have that advantage just by the sheer veracity of the number of games that you're putting up.
Yeah, and he's super correct. But say like him and Michael Reed are playing a challenge, like Eureka, right? And then you see like him and the Eureka in the top 8, Iko Baronin in the top 8. That's 2 Blue-Black Reanimator slots. It's not that like Blue-Black Reanimators is busted 25% of the top 8 metagame. It's that those 2 players are cracked. Like you see Doomsday winning a challenge, and you look, it's like Wonder Pro. It's like, yeah, of course. Like it's not that you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, of course.
There's some really good players who are playing these like relatively smallish events and doing decently well to go like 4-2 with good breakers or 5-1 into top 8, and once they hit the top 8, that's the cut that people are looking at. And so it's like Eureka, or like I won a challenge a few weeks ago with Blue-Black Reanimator. I went 4-2 in the Swiss and snuck into 8th seed, and then like locked in and played well enough to get to the top. And it's the kind of thing or I split the finals, but I won 2 matches and then handshake the last one. But the point being is that like, yeah, I didn't go whatever 8-0 through everything. I snuck in by the skin of my teeth, and that's not shown in the results. It's not that I had this dominant performance or the deck had a dominant performance or anything like that. And I don't think that if I had played Delver or Doomsday instead, that I wouldn't have gotten that result.
Hey, Legacy fans, since you're enjoying the show, please like and subscribe to the video. It helps the channel grow.
Support Eternal Turtles on Patreon so we can create even more content and cover events.
Patreons get an ad-free RSS feed, 4 bonus episodes a month, and Discord recognition. Join the Dirtle Maniacs at patreon.com/eternaldurtles.
Now back to the show.
It's funny mentioning that now, because when I look for a deck, and I'm like, okay, let me see what the stock build of this deck is, and you'll see like first or fourth, or like you're looking at all these things. I generally take from like the top 32, because a lot of those people pretty much had the same record in Swiss a lot of times. But like, you generally think, like, not you, the royal
The viewer.
you, you
Us.
generally think go for the first place deck, right? That's the deck that that's the deck that won. Go for that. But there's not much difference between that and the guy who came in second, or the guy, even the guy who came in like 40th place. If they're all playing the same build, it was just one person had like made 1 or 2 less play mistakes in the course of the event.
Right. Or got a good top deck when the other player didn't, or faced the matchups that they wanted to face, or all these things, right? Like, it's, survivorship bias is a big issue. But I guess really back to the ban list and like why people are unhappy. I understand why people are sick of playing against Entomb Reanimate, because even more so now, I think that this version of Blue Black Reanimator is the least graveyard reliant it's ever been, which is a problem because now Graveyard Hate is as bad as it's ever been against the deck.
Yeah.
There's been times that I get my opponent leylines me, like on Moto, they put in a leyline. I'm like, okay, like, I guess I'll deal with this. And they put in a second leyline, and I'm happy about that. I'm like, cool, okay.
Yeah. Sweet. That's one less
I
card,
can now
right?
pivot away. I'll just brainstorm away my Entombs. I'll reanimate their stuff, and I'll just ride a Tameo to victory.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is like, whenever you see like the second sideboard hate card come out, you're like, great. Now I will pivot my plan completely to the side.
Right. And I think that when it was a more dedicated deck, it couldn't do that.
So something I wanted to address, because how did you actually feel about the announcement itself?
When I read it, I was like, people are gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
Like, I was not pissed, but I was like, man, people are gonna be mad about this.
Yeah.
Which is, so for myself, I think it was the right decision from a impersonal perspective, but the wrong decision from a keep legacy players engaged and interested perspective.
That is exactly the point I wanted to make, is that so many people read that and went, they don't care about us. Why am I playing? Like, literally the very first thing I tweeted afterwards was like, I'm glad pre-modern rules. I was like, great. At least I have pre-modern to fall back on and have a good time with. And like, full disclosure, I'll probably be casting Entomb at Eternal Weekend. Like, I'm not going to be too good to cast Entomb. Like, if that's the guarantee I have for the next 6 months, I'm going to get very, very good with that deck. Now, not for nothing, I'm a year and a half behind getting very, very good with that deck. So a lot of people are going to have a leg up on me on that. But, 5 months of straight practice, I might be able to get to a point where I can put up a place, to that end.
It's not that hard.
It's
one
not
of the
tough.
reasons why
No. You gave me the list, I want to say, like, right before the last ban announcement, like when Psychic Frog was still in. And I played your list, and I top 8'd, touching the deck for the first time, like a challenge. So, like, yeah, it's not tough. Like, if you put an attraction into play, the game's ostensibly over for most people anyhow. Like, sometimes you have to defend it, or you have to try and find another way around. But like, the deck does kind of run on autopilot. Like, let's be serious.
Honestly, so the reason I really like playing this version of the deck is, for me right now, I like playing, like, there's enough various scary as fuck decks in Legacy right now. Like, Mystic Forge is the main one coming to mind, but there's a lot of like various decks that like are really scary if left unchecked and kind of just go exponentially crazy. When I'm playing something like regular blue-black tempo or blue-red tempo, the Delver decks, you have to have this like really tight play and really good foresight and adaptability on hindsight. And you just like eke out these wins by like narrow margins by playing super locked in, super tight. And I think honestly right now, like, if you're going to play really, really well, those decks are better than Blue-Black Reanimator if you're not going to fuck up. But I'm going to fuck up a little bit.
My brain is smooth.
Yeah, so it's nice to go, okay, cool. Yeah, I fucked up and I lost that Tameo unforced error there, but
Yeah.
can you beat this and to reanimate? And so that is kind of, it's nice to have that, for me personally, it's like a little bit easier deck to play. And so, like when I went to Vegas last weekend, I went 5-2 with Blue Black Reanimator. I started 1-2 and I rallied back.
Nice.
Kind of happy about that. And I didn't take Blue Black Tempo, even though I thought I was like slightly better positioned, because I knew that I was going to be drinking the night before, not running on as much sleep and
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
that.
exactly.
And
If you're
so
hanging out, if you're doing the
I
Vegas thing,
took
of course.
the deck that cuts me some slack. So there's a lot of benefits to taking a deck like Blue Black Reanimator and playing a deck like Blue Black Reanimator, because it's still a really high skill ceiling deck. Like, the Eco Baronins of the world are just, absolutely crushing with it. And so, like, and Eureka, and the point being is that, like, it's this really high skill ceiling deck, but it's also higher floor than Blue Black Tempo or other decks. And so I think as far as this large metagame share goes, if you, like, we just talked about the fact that we're both probably playing at Eternal Weekend, because we know that if it's not the best deck in the room, it's close. Like, it's number 2 or 3 or 4 at the worst.
I know that there's zero chance that, and this happened to me over the weekend, that my opponent is going to multi-4. I'm going to start the game with a Core Nomad and a Cephalillusionist in my hand. They're going to play Oops. I counter their first thing, and then the second thing that happens is I untap after I've already cast my Core Nomad, and I draw my Dread Return and go, I guess I passed. And lose the game. That's not going to happen with Reanimator, at least. I'm not going to draw the one card in my deck I shouldn't draw. I can I can play like a game of Magic where like every card in my deck is supposed to be in my hand at some point.
So that's why don't cut Archon or
Yeah.
Atraxa. Like, don't board down to one target, because you will draw it. I promise you.
Yeah, it'll always happen.
Anyway, like the point being about the bans, I guess circling back to that, is I get that people are upset. I get that people are feeling disengaged. I get that people are feeling this is the same and it's the same kind of thing they've experienced. I think that basically, the pessimistic takeaway is, cool, play some pre-modern, do something else, read books, touch grass, play a different game, like play a different format. Whatever it is, like within that, like find that sparks joy. If Legacy is not sparking joy, do that. But then within Legacy, I think that people are legitimately not innovating. I think that people are not trying hard enough to improve their lists, or are being lazy with their deck selection. Again, I just talked about this, guilty of that. I am personally, I think, could, if I worked harder at it, come up with a better deck than Blue Black Reanimator right now. I think that a really well built Blue Red Delver deck, or like Blue Red Tempo, I think is there. I think that there's probably some version of a stock up blue deck that is better than that, because stock up is a pretty fucked up card. I think that there's a lot of things that exist under the surface right now that are better than this. And I think that as a collective, we're not putting enough effort into finding this.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
fair.
think that Blue Black Reanimator right now is busted enough to be like, oh, this is the best thing to be doing, bar none.
I just wish one of those things was to play Minsk and Boo. It just is not. Gone are the days of a 4-mana Planeswalker being good.
I think it's less power creep for Minsk and Boo's sake. I think it's more Hydroblast. Like, Hydroblast is
this is true. Yeah,
mainstay in the metagame that it wasn't when Minsk and Boo was a real role player.
Yeah. All right. Well, Max, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your opinion of the ban restricted announcement with me, because it's always good to like have somebody to help me touch grass after this happens. And I got to have my rant already, so like I was able to get a lot of this out of my system. I'm only half as despondent as I was when we started the show.
One last aside. I think that there's subtext within this that if they didn't ban anything from Reanimator this time around, I think Entomb is safe.
I do agree with you. Yeah.
I think
I do.
Entomb is basically a card that they're not considering to ban. I think that if they were going to ban something, they would.
I think specifically if they're not banning it now and then they're skipping Eternal Weekend for the next ban, they're like literally not going to ban anything till after next Eternal Weekend. Entomb is as a pillar as Days is, which is unofficially it seems like it's a pillar.
Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to get that out there and say, yeah, I mean, you can keep on saying ban Entomb like the general you, the same way people say ban Days or ban Ancient Tomb or all these cards that are never getting banned. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's never getting banned. So I guess that's an argument to try pre-modern, but
unban Entomb in pre-modern. That's people want to unban Entomb in pre-modern. But
play Vintage where there's no Entomb but there is Bazaar.
Yeah,
I mean, Entomb is legal. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but
no one's playing.
That's too slow. To use the graveyard.
You have this card called Oath of Druids that you can play.
Yeah,
that just does it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I think that's a great place to stop. Entomb, it's happening, guys. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button. It grows the legacy content ecosystem we all love by relaying to the platform that you are part of our passionate community.
And to go even further, click the links for subscription or to support directly via Patreon to help us create more content for you. Patreon supporters get 4 exclusive extra episodes per month. If you're listening on an audio platform, head over to patreon.com/eternaldurdles.
Thanks so much for your support.
We'll see you in the next one.